It has been way too long since we talked about a horror movie, hasn't it? We've been so focused on SpongeBob and John Wick and all this other stuff that we haven't really talked about much horror yet this year, have we? Well, why not start with this one? Because the new one came out today, and I gotta get these two reviews out quick before I go and see that one. So, you'll be getting reviews of this entire trilogy today. So let's go ahead and get started with the original. And man, it surprised me how well it has held up, despite being over 20 years old. And you'd think, oh, it's just another zombie movie. It's just going to follow the same cliches that we've seen 1,000 times. Well, no. This particular zombie movie actually did some different, unique things. Now, yes, I know that they're not called zombies in the actual movie, but they're pretty much zombies. They go after flesh. They count. So even though some people just want to call this a post-apocalypse movie, I'm calling it a zombie movie. And a damn good one at that. So, what's up, what's happening, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Emission Station. You're just for anything and everything. Emission, including a sponge that lives in the pineapple under the... Sorry, I went on autopilot. Welcome back to Animation Station, your number one station for anything and everything animation, as well as horror movies. I'm your local horror nut, Jackson Small. Let's talk about the cult classic that is 28 Days Later, and how it took the pre-established zombie genre and flipped it upside down. So, without further ado, here's my review. And if you can't tell by my excitement, yeah, this is going to be positive. Here we go. Let's dive in. Oh yeah. Now this is a damn good zombie movie. And now that 28 years later is finally coming out, after a lot of waiting and I think some kind of production hell, I don't know, it wasn't really made clear, I can now give this rage-fueled bloodbath the praise that it deserves. So let's begin with the original that started all 28 Days Later, from I believe 2002. Yeah, like I said, 20-year-plus old movie. Acting is mostly really good, especially now Oscar-winning actor Cillian Murphy. If you're wondering where the Oscar came from, it's from Oppenheimer, in one of his first ever roles, and it would be far from his last. He was Oppenheimer, he was Scarecrow in the Nolan Batman movies. Like, this dude has a great filmography. I highly recommend you to go check it out for yourself. And in here, he is really good in one of his first ever roles as this guy who just wakes up in an empty hospital in an empty city and slowly but surely has to learn how to survive. It's pretty damn cool. That opening scene is amazing. From Cillian Murphy waking up in the hospital bed to him walking outside to seeing the desolate, quiet city that has been either evacuated or turned from the epidemic. It is some great tone-setting shit. The tone is dreary. It is dark, it is unrelenting, and it's actually scary, believe it or not. Cinematography is gritty. There is shaky cam, yes, but it's not like Transformers level bad. It's perfectly good enough to sell the grit of the movie's tone and situation. Special effects are a solid mix of good CGI and old school practicals. Now, this movie isn't super gory. We're not talking like the Romero zombie movies or anything like that, but it does still have its fair share of blood and really, really gruesome practical effects. But there's also some pretty solid CGI, which even, especially back in the early 2000s, that was rare, because most of the time when you see CGI in an early 2000s movie, it looks like the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man. It looks bad. The Rage Virus zombies are scary as fuck. Yes, these zombies in this movie, they're different, they don't follow the same tired template, and they are terrifying as hell. Like, if you go in expecting this movie not to scare you just because it's a zombie movie, buckle the fuck up, because it is going to scare the piss out of you with these things that are driven by nothing but rage and a need for flesh, running at you at full speed without stopping. It is some crazy shit. Music is outstanding. Music is so good in this movie, dude. Like, it's iconic. The score in this movie is iconic. The final act is a very satisfying bloodbath of both villain characters getting their comeuppance and zombies doing what zombies do. The pacing is superb. It's a slow burn, but it's not slow to the point of boring. Runtime is excellent. I think this movie is like barely over 2 hours. It's a pretty easy, quick sit. And rewatchability is high. I will watch this thing anytime I am in the mood for a zombie movie. It's either this or the original Night of the Living Dead. Or Zombieland. It bounces between those three, it depends on my mood. Honestly, my only problems with this one are a bunch of minor things. Some of the side characters are hit or miss. Like, the side characters, the acting is really good, but the characters themselves are just kind of your typical zombie movie fare. And they can make some really dumb decisions at times. Like, there are definitely those characters in here that count as what we horror fans call slasher fodder. Or in this case, zombie fodder. The gore is decent, but a lot more tame than you'd expect for a zombie movie. Yeah, it's weird. Like, despite this movie being rated R, this movie's gore, it's pretty tame. Like, it cuts away before it gets, like, super gruesome. Again, we're not talking anywhere close to something like the Romero movies. Those are an absolute gory bloodbath. Here, it's more quick cuts and focusing on scares rather than visual severance, I'll call it. Visual severance. So, you're not going to see like limbs flying off or anything like that. You'll just see a lot of blood splatter. So, that is going to be disappointing if you go in with this movie with the mindset of something like the Romero movies or Zombieland. You expect something like super gory. Here, you get something that's really bloody, but doesn't really have any like severing of limbs or anything like that. And some of its subject matter can be a little triggering nowadays for some people. There is a sexual assault scene in here. So if you're someone that's been through that in real life, don't watch this movie. It has that scene, and that scene will trigger you. The directing is a little shaky. Danny Boyle is a good director, but this is definitely one of those movies where he was still trying to find his bearings, and there were times where the directing was a little shaky. Not just the shaky cam, but I mean like the way he shoots it, or the way that he tries to plan all this stuff out. It's nothing against the guy. He is a talented director. This is just one of his first movies, and you can tell it's one of his first movies, which, that's not a bad thing. With directors, when you're watching their first ever movie, when it's someone like Christopher Nolan or David Fincher, their first ever movie is more of just them making something they want to make, and then later as they keep making more movies to find their style and find their niche. This is one of Danny Boyle's first films, so you can tell that he does still have rough edges. He still has that amateurism, but it's not to the point of being like awful or like he doesn't deserve to direct or anything like that. So it does have its shaky moments with direction, but Boyle does do a good job. Oh, and the out-of-nowhere villains are very boring. This movie, just for some reason in the final act, decides to just throw in a random military people as villains, and they try to assault the female character. Why were they there? They really did not need to be there, and they weren't there throughout the entirety of the movie. So, having them in there, and when you get to that scene, it's just really, well, forced. Despite all of that, though, I know I started shitting on the movie for a second, but trust me, those are all minor nitpicks. This is still a really good zombie movie with a surprising amount of originality that helps it stand out from the rest of the undead in the graveyard. Like, we have had a zillion zombie movies, and a lot of them feel generic, like they're following that same template we've seen over and over. But every now and then we get things like Zombieland, things like Shaun of the Dead, that are completely different from the norm, And this is also one of those too. Like, sure, it is still a zombie movie, but it's its own zombie movie. It only follows like the bare basics, and then the rest it just makes up on its own, which is always something that's really nice to see, especially nowadays, because even though there are a lot of indie horror movies, like big name production company horror movies, most of the time nowadays are like remakes, reboots, sequels, stuff like that. So seeing originality is definitely something to be praised. Sure, it's got some faults, and I personally prefer the OG George A. Romero quadrilogy, and you can go watch my 31 Days of Horror Year 2 marathon for those reviews. I love those movies. But despite it being over 20 years old, it still holds up really well. If you have not seen this movie and you love zombie movies or post-apocalyptic stories, you're gonna dig this one. Definitely check it out if you haven't seen it yet. It is a pretty damn good zombie movie that's worth your time. Final verdict for 28 Days Later is a high and well-deserved 8 out of 10. Sure, it's not like one of the greatest zombie movies ever made or anything like that, but it's still a damn good zombie movie, and it did a good job being unique from its brethren. So, there we go. That concludes this long review for the first installment of the 28 Later trilogy. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like this almost every single day. And I'll see you guys next time when we talk about the disappointing but still solid sequel, 28 Weeks Later.
Decided for what comes up.